Inside of Russia, the facade is cracking, and now the fractures are becoming public. The shock is hitting the army, the electrical grid, and the economy. And when the elites sour, regime survival mechanisms start to slip. And today, the elites are seeing that Russia is losing. Moscow is losing not just on the battlefield, though, but also internationally. Right now, Moscow's intelligence network across Europe is shrinking, and that is why Tradecraft is being replaced by improvisation. Around 700 Russian intelligence officers have been expelled since 2022. Bulgaria has expelled 82, Germany 65, Poland 58, Romania 52. The list goes on and on. But why is this? It's because Russia is out of options. Russia does not have the ability to wage war in Ukraine or internationally. Russia today is losing. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kyiv Post and a national security advisor. What we see going on is pretty fascinating. Russia is doing badly and it's getting even worse, which is very common in Russian history. So let's dive into this. Let's look at exactly what's going on and why it is so dramatically bad for Russia. But first, do me just one small favor. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel and consider becoming a channel member today. This channel exists only for one purpose: to get out the truth of what's happening here, where I live, in Ukraine, and what's really happening with Russia, a country that is falling apart more so by the day. So with the trained officers gone, without having these intelligence experts, Moscow is pivoting to using paid agents, Sabotage, and they have Telegram channels with which they recruit people. I did a deep dive in this and investigated what those sorts of channels were like, what they offer people. And some of these groups have names like Работа в Ukraine, work in Ukraine. And you would think that you're going to find a normal job, some sort of a side hustle. But in fact, it's a little bit different. They offer money for things that are probably not very legal. For instance, setting fire to a police car will get you between $2,000 to $3,000. Attacking a government building, about $5,000. Attacking an enlistment center, $3,000. Attacking things in the electric substations, $2,000. Cell phone towers, $750. The list goes on and on. This shows how stretched their security sources are at this point, that they have to rely on these sorts of efforts. But that's the best that Russia can offer today. Russia on the battlefield is facing tremendous losses. The losses are simply incredible. In fact, Russia today is losing about 35,000 soldiers per month. Its intake of new soldiers is only about 32,000. And that's why they're increasingly reliant on foreign fighters. They can't continue fighting. But the Kremlin is worried about that. It's worried by the fact that the generals are starting to lose hope. They realize that things are bad. And that's why when we saw that the general who runs the 18th Army, the one that defends occupied southern Ukraine, including Crimea and Zaporizhia, when his son was killed in battle just recently in occupied Ukraine, the Kremlin rushed to give him a medal. They gave him the award Hero of Russia within hours of his death. They had a national television show about it. Now, why that matters is that everybody else in the military also saw this. The paratroopers who are left without reconnaissance, the recon units who say that what they give over to the government is totally ignored, they all say the government has no time for us. They don't care about the information we give them. They don't care about our lives. But they do only care about the general's son's life. That's something that does not engender a great deal of love or obedience within the military. But today, the desertions speak for themselves. Look at the over 25,000 soldiers that have deserted just between the end of 2024 and the middle part of 2025. Some of those soldiers fled with weapons and vehicles, and that is not only worsening unit readiness, but is also posing a threat to the regime back in Russia. We've seen plenty of soldiers have vanished from the hospitals or they return from leave. Never. Because they realize that it is a death trip. It is a one-way trip when you join the Russian military and go to Ukraine. So today, they don't know what to do. They have soldiers who don't want to fight, and they realize they could start to lose some of the occupied territories. And that's why Russia today is rushing to do something, is rushing to put more people into the occupied territories. They say that they're returning the residents of the Donbass or Zaporizhia or Kherson, but in fact, it's not really like that. What they're doing is importing Russians from minority regions like Yakutia or Buryatia to go live in the occupied territories. These people get priority housing, jobs, benefits. But these new residents now are also being recruited for jobs like local administration or to work for the police. But the reality is that Russia is doing this because it needs quickly to have an argument of why it needs to stay there, why it needs to stay in occupied territories that is currently beginning to lose. The battlefield for Russia has become a bear trap, and that pressure is mounting throughout all of Russia. Of course, Ukraine's ongoing attacks on the refineries, such as the one in Samara, are affecting everything that goes on. That refinery produced almost 5 million tons a year, but today there's just incendiary fires that go throughout the factory. There is no more gasoline coming out of it. Look at the Orenburg gas plant. It halted the intake from Kazakhstan after a strike there as well. Look at the fires, and you yourself come to a conclusion. Do you think they'll be able to rebuild that quickly? They will not. All of this is hurting Russia. Coupled with other attacks, like the recent attack on the Crimean Feodosia fuel hub, we see that Russia is not able to tolerate more hits like this. It's starting to destabilize their economy. And the attacks in Ukraine is carried out are not just for show. They are ones that will change the outcome of this war. The attacks on the substations, the blackouts that come as a result of them, that are things that will definitely change how Russia's ability to continue fighting, or its inability to continue fighting. But now there's entire regions of Russia that are vulnerable to losing electricity. Nizhny Novgorod, Ulyanovsk, Samara, Penza, Volgorod, Saratov, Vladimir, Ivanovo. They are all losing their ability to have electricity. It's not clear if they will continue being able to turn on lights or if they'll continue being able to even buy gasoline or diesel. So if you don't have electricity and you can't buy diesel, it means generators can't work. What sort of an economy can function there? How should people there feel? Well, surveys inside of Russia now indicate that the strikes are translating into daily pain for the average citizen. In fact, 74% of drivers say that prices today are higher than they were just a month ago. 90% expect the prices to continue going up. 56% say that the rise is significant and not marginal. All of this, though, is having an effect. All of this is affecting Russia's ability to continue operating. Inside of Russia, we see that the regional budgets are also affected by this. The strain of war is coming home to them. Regional deficits today have reached almost $8 billion. Now, what's incredible is that the subsidized regions, it was only 45 before, but now there are 68 regions of Russia that have to be subsidized by the government. And we see that the governments at the local level, they have no idea what to do. Novosibirsk is raising the transport tax by 11%. We see Orenburg has increased it by over 30%. All of these taxes do not help the local economy. And the local economies there are doing terribly. Hence why there's decreased revenues for the city administrations there. But Russia is doing the same thing on the national level. It's increasing corporate taxes as we speak. And what's the mistake in that is corporations within Russia, they don't have a lot of money. We know that they have a huge problem with liquidity. Look at the cuts and the cancellations that expose the liquidity stress that is happening despite the fact that the government keeps saying that everything is fine. There is a promise of stability. The Defense Ministry, its contract in Samara, it fell from about $22,000 to about $4,000. So why would they cut this? Why would they have such large cuts? For a country at war, you would imagine the war is a priority. They will always find money. But the fact is, they simply do not have enough money. And that's why in St. Petersburg, we see them retroactively revoking the volunteer bonuses for those that join the military. Now, how do you think those soldiers feel today to find out they will not be getting their bonuses? That they are now in the occupied territory of Ukraine, and that soon they might not get the money they've been promised. Take a look at how desperate Russia has become. Today, they're recruiting prisoners. That's not new. But look what they're doing. Back in 2019, a prisoner could get paid about $155 per month. Today, it's $347. Still not big money, but remember, in about 73 regions of Russia, a teacher only makes about $236 per month, which probably explains why Russia is short about 250,000 teachers in their country. There's not enough teachers and there's not enough money for them, but they do try to get as much money as they can from the corporations as well as from the people to pay for this war. Today, there's going to be more problems for Russia. Things will not get better. Just look at some of the recent economic data that comes out of Russia. Firms there and corporations are starting to suffer. Regional corporate tax intake has fallen 5% year over year, but mortgage issuances have dropped 8% month over month. Households are having bigger problems paying their debts. In fact, there is a massive problem within Russia of people now defaulting. Consumer spending is halved since just a few months ago. That is a massive change, halved in just a few months. And today, new housing starts fell about 16%. Inventories have bloomed 36%. Entrepreneurial intentions to open new businesses is 14%. It was 31% back in 2009. All around, we see that the Russians are looking for cash. And the Russian people see the situation is bad. They feel that it's bad. And like the elites in Russia, they think that the end might be coming near, that soon things might get totally out of control. Today, they see the fuel lines. They see the people that are looking for jobs that join the military and then don't get paid. They see that their own government cannot defend the territory of Russia and that there's clearly no strategy to win in Ukraine. Looking ahead, it's clear that the Russians are in a very bad situation. But that's important because the elite frustration is intersecting with the public fatigue that compounds the risk for the Kremlin. Officers today resent the waste. The families resent the losses, the higher bills, the unaffordability of living in Russia, a country that doesn't protect them. It can't offer them anything but an economy that is getting worse. An economy is getting worse as the government promises them that everything is under control. But within the Kremlin itself, the moves that we see there are pretty shocking. The fact that Vladimir Putin, for such long periods now, seems to disappear. Nobody's quite sure where he really is. Now, we know that Vladimir Putin is very scared of flying by plane. That's not something new. We also know he's scared of meeting with people. In fact, he probably only meets with 3 or 5 people per day. He's pretty much kept in the dark. He doesn't have a cell phone, he doesn't have a computer, and he doesn't watch television. He does not read the newspapers. He only gets information that a select few give him, which skews totally his understanding of what's really happening inside of his country. And for a dictator like Putin, that is a very dangerous situation. When you're in a situation that you really don't know what's happening, but there's more and more pressure in society, more and more people that believe that the country has reached a dead end, and an elite that's looking at how to take advantage of that, you're already in a very bad dead end. Because looking ahead, what can Putin expect? That it'll just naturally get better? That naturally things will just be fine? There's no reason to believe that. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. And so Vladimir Putin, if he was wise, would receive more information. He would make changes in order to alleviate distress. But he's not making those changes. And that's why today, the chance that somebody in senior leadership will decide to make a play for it, to make a move to replace Putin, is getting dramatically higher. All of the data points coming out of Russia today indicate only one thing, that Russia's collapse is getting ever nearer. And for Vladimir Putin, he has never been in a more dangerous situation. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And consider becoming a channel member today. And please do leave your comments below. Let me know where you're from. And also let me know what other topics you think would be interesting for videos. I love to read your feedback. As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.
Йди забери в неї чемодан.
Це тобі. Це тобі.
А чого ти плачеш, Ілюха?
Але я можу гратися ігрушками. Ніхто мене нічого не запрещає, ніхто мене нічого не командує. Це і є незалежність. Життя без Росії. Незалежність – це свобода.
Це право на власний вибір, на власне слово і на те, щоб кожна людина жила так, як вона хоче.
Коли тобою не управляються, ніхто не говорить, що тобі робити.
Це воля і свобода вирішувати щось самостійно.
Коли ти самостійний і робиш що завгодно.
Не будуть сварити ні за що, і ти будеш просто вільний.
Допомагати воїнам, захищати Україну.
Коли ти можеш робити те, що ти любиш, свобода слова, можна виразити свою думку, тобі нічого не буде з це.
Вільні люди, вільне серце. Це наша вільна Україна.
Союз навіть війни. Незалежність країни – це коли країну не керує інша країна.
Незалежність це коли ти не залежиш від когось іншого.
А від кого ти можеш залежати?
Від мами.